Hello, it is Thursday, the 18th December 2025. My name is Katie, and these are your news headlines. In Australia, where the man accused of carrying out Sunday's mass shooting at a Hanukkah celebration on Bondi Beach has now been charged with 15 counts of murder and almost 60 offences in total. 24-year-old Naveed Akram remains in hospital under armed guard after being shot by police at the scene. His father, who was also involved in the attack, died during the incident. Police say early indications point to an ISIS-inspired act, and investigators are examining a recent trip the pair made to the Philippines. Funerals have begun for the victims, who ranged in age from 10 to 87. There has been another mass kidnapping in central Nigeria, where armed men abducted at least 13 people from a church in Kogi State during Sunday morning service. The attackers stormed the evangelical church Winning All in the rural district of Azkiri, opening fire before taking members of the congregation. 5 of the gunmen were killed, but others escaped despite being wounded. Officials describe the assailants as criminal bandits and say a security crackdown in neighbouring states is pushing armed groups further into Kogi. It is the second church kidnapping in the region in 2 weeks and comes amid a wider surge in mass abductions across Nigeria's northwest and central regions. More than 250 children and staff were taken from a school in Niger State at the end of November. President Bola Tinubu has ordered security chiefs to intensify intelligence-led operations and deploy extra troops, but attacks continue, particularly in rural areas where response times are slow. In the UK, 5 people have been arrested after chants involving calls for intifada were heard at a pro-Palestinian protest outside the Ministry of Justice in Westminster. 2 people were detained on suspicion of racially aggravated public order offences, and others were arrested for obstructing police and further public order breaches. The action follows a joint warning from the Met Police and Greater Manchester Police that certain chants would now lead to arrest, following the Bondi Beach attack and the earlier killings at Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester. A British man captured while fighting for Ukraine has been sentenced to 13 years in a Russian-controlled court in Donetsk. Hayden Davies, a former British soldier serving with Ukraine's Foreign Legion, was convicted on charges the UK government says are false. The Foreign Office says Davies is a prisoner of war and cannot legally be prosecuted for taking part in hostilities, and has demanded Russia comply with international law. It follows the earlier sentencing of another Briton, James Anderson, who received 19 years. The government has launched an independent review into foreign financial interference in British politics after former MEP Nathan Gill was jailed for taking Russian-linked bribes. Gill, who previously represented UKIP and the Brexit Party, was sentenced to more than 10 years in prison for making pro-Russia statements in exchange for money. The review, led by former civil servant Philip Rycroft, will examine political finance rules, party regulations, and the risks posed by illicit or overseas donations, including cryptocurrency. It will report by the end of March. Keir Starmer is facing a growing rebellion on his own backbenches over plans to restrict jury trials to only the most serious offences. 39 Labour MPs, including Diane Abbott, have signed a letter urging the Prime Minister to drop the proposals, arguing that limiting jury trials would erode a fundamental right while doing little to reduce the Crown Court backlog. Justice Secretary David Lammy says the reforms are necessary to ease pressure on the system, while Starmer insists juries will remain central for the most serious cases. Labour's flagship employment rights bill has cleared its final parliamentary hurdle and is expected to become law before Christmas. The bill introduces day one rights to sick pay and paternity leave, and new protections for pregnant women and new mothers. Labour dropped its original plan for day one unfair dismissal rights, but enhanced protections will apply after 6 months. Unions have welcomed the bill, while business groups and Conservative MPs warn it could increase costs for employers. The government is consulting on a new draft definition of anti-Muslim hatred that avoids the term Islamophobia. The wording, produced by an independent working group, aims to help public bodies identify prejudice and discrimination against Muslims while protecting freedom of expression. Free speech campaigners warn the definition could risk overreach, while members of the working group say it strikes the right balance. The government says rising hate crime makes the work essential and that free speech will remain central to any final definition. The International Olympic Committee has confirmed it is working towards early 2026 to finalise a new policy on eligibility in women's sport. The IOC's president, Kirsty Coventry, said the organisation is reviewing how to protect the female category at elite level, with a decision expected ahead of the Milan Cortina Winter Games. The policy is likely to address transgender athletes and those with differences in sexual development, while the IOC maintains that access to sport at grassroots level remains a universal right. Health Secretary Wes Streeting has rejected calls to halt a clinical trial of puberty-blocking drugs for gender-questioning children. Streeting said he remains uncomfortable about the use of the drugs, but is following expert advice from the CAS review, which recommended a tightly controlled trial to establish clear evidence on safety and outcomes. The Pathways trial, due to begin in January, will involve around 200 children and will require parental consent. Critics, including Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch, say the trial risks harming children, while some Labour MPs argue it is the safest way to prevent young people seeking unregulated treatment. And finally, a man from Dorset has been jailed for 18 months for online posts encouraging violence against migrants and politicians. 36-year-old Luke Yarwood admitted inciting racial hatred after calling for migrant hotels to be burned down and urging people to target MPs and Parliament. His posts were viewed by the grand total of 33 people before being reported by a family member. The judge said the messages were odious and intended to provoke violence. Those were your news headlines for today, Thursday 18th December 2025. Thank you very much for listening. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, etc. Support non-biased journalism. If you want my biases, let me know, not a problem, I will include them. But otherwise, thank you very much for listening and I'll see you tomorrow. Support honest journalism. Make sure you like, leave a comment and subscribe. No bias, no bullshit, only the facts.